Okay. Today we got a special treat. We're doing a live consult with a family with a plethora of issues going on. So this can be really unique. This is Your Health Reclaimed. I'm Dr. Brad, veteran functional medicine doc. We're the ones who get people well after they've seen multiple docs for years, decades, never got any help, and we usually get them healthy again. Huge percentage of that. So today we have Rebecca and Scott with us. I got a couple questions before we jump into things. Scott, for you, um, with the broken femur, which femur was that?
My left.
And which knee is it you having problems with?
The left.
Okay. How did you break that?
Football. They had a running back planted his knee in the side of my femur. We were running different directions, not looking, and it snapped the end of my medial condyle clean off.
How old were you when that happened?
Uh, 15. Maybe 14.
I'm writing down a note on this. Did the knee problem develop right away or did that come later?
Later.
How much later?
30 years.
30 years?
30 years,
Uh,
Robert.
Yeah,
20
so
years.
I mean, I had some knee problems from the military, just from the overuse of it. So I had some clicking and popping and soreness. But when we had our first child, so this is back in 2019, I was getting into bed holding him, and I went to turn, and my foot got stuck in the sheet, and my bottom half of my leg stopped while I kept rotating, and it came out and tore my meniscus, and um, yeah, ever since then it's been giving me problems.
So that was in 2019, you said?
Yeah. So now if I bend and twist in the wrong direction with the wrong force, it just slides out, and sometimes it pops back in, sometimes I need to go see the chiropractor to have him get it back aligned so the hinge is right.
What kind of therapies have you done for that?
Not much.
You said not much?
No. I originally I had an MRI done, and they said I had a meniscal tear, and I really didn't want to do surgery, but I still couldn't walk at that time, and I was actually in my office working, and I didn't have my crutches, but I slipped and I stepped on my leg, and it popped back into place, and 98% of the pain was gone like that. So I just never went back because I didn't want to have surgery, and that's kind of how it's been since then. So
He
kind of back
doesn't
to
want to have
adjustments.
surgery because he's worried it will make it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in that, and commonly, um, if the pain went away that quickly, it's probably not just your meniscus. There's probably other things going on that set the stage for that, which the predisposition for all that probably happened when the femur got broken,
Yeah.
and there's ways to rehab that, fix all that, that are not surgical, that work really, really, really well. You know, yeah, I've got a big background in orthopedics, huge. Um, when I was in the school clinic, my clinic advisor was the guy that ran the orthopedic program in at least 5 states. He pulled me in his office twice, and once was to try and get an orthopedic ticket. And I told him I didn't have time for plaques on the wall. I had a family, and I need to spend time with my family, and not get a plaque on the wall. And he keeps trying to talk to me, and he finally says, "Look, I run the orthopedic program in 5 states. You know more than 80% of my docs that teach it. You need a plaque on the wall." Said, "That has no value to me." and he just didn't understand it. But we've been able to keep at least 80% of people out of surgery and everything that we've touched. So there's ways to do it. Um, we just got to look at it and find out what's really going on and address that. But the meniscus is usually a result of other things that have set the stage, along with everything else. And, once you start to address those, you can do that pretty well. And looking at some of the pictures that you had, looks like your house is under construction.
Yeah.
As
Okay.
we speak right now.
Do you do carpentry yourself, Scott?
No. No.
Okay.
I'm good at a lot of things. That is not one of them.
Yeah, because there's some really simple things you can do if you're a carpenter to really rehab your knee and make it really well. So that was one thing that I had a question with. Okay, and Rebecca, when we look at you with 3 generations of cancer issues and children having indications of thyroid issues where you had your cancer, that's suggestive of lifestyle issues. That's not genetics. Do you understand epigenetics at all?
Yes, and I also often talk to people about only 5% of cancers are actually genetic at all, and it's more like it runs in families because of lifestyle factors and what you're exposed to and what you eat and how you live and
Yep, and that's it. That's the huge flag. Epigenetics is how your lifestyle affects genetic expression. Every gene has 30,000 potential ways to express itself, and how we live affects that. And every aspect of life, belief systems, relational interaction, relational health, diet, the list has no end. It just has no end. But when you see something like that, it lets you know there's some major defects in family lifestyle patterns. Your diet usually has a huge part to do with that, and that's really huge. So if we look at one other question. You guys both had a history of Lyme disease in the past. Any history of ticks with that?
yeah, we actually were looking for properties in Tennessee, and it was the first time, to my knowledge, I was ever bit by a tick. Ticks are very infrequent in Michigan, or they used to be. We both got bit on the same property showing with some nymph ticks. We found them only a handful of hours later, somewhere in the range of like 4 to 7 hours after they would have been attached or bitten, got on us, not even attached, I guess. And then about 10 days later, I got all the classic symptoms minus the rash of Lyme disease. And then a day later, he got the stiff neck and like the, burning joint pain and headaches. And his symptoms were less severe and lasted less long.
Mm-hmm.
And I had chosen to do doxycycline, even though at that time I was adamantly opposed to antibiotics. And I did that alongside an herbal protocol, which was Buhner's herbal protocol. But 2 weeks into doing that, I found out I was pregnant, so I stopped all of it because none of it was really safe for pregnancy. And Scott continued on with the rest of his, was it a 5 or 6 week course of doxy?
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know, I think it was like 10 or 11. It wasn't very long. It wasn't the 20.
Oh,
I
yours was
did-
14. Mine
Yes,
was
it was.
5 weeks, but I only did 2 weeks. And then that was, once I stopped treating mine early, he stopped treating his. He's never had symptoms come back of it though, and I have symptoms that come and go.
And prior to that, I probably had between 5 and 10 over my lifetime, between being in the military, hunting, just being outdoors.
And I had 1.
Yeah. So over the lifetime, the noise in the background, that 5
I,
to 10
between
ticks?
probably, 5 to 10 ticks embedded over my lifetime.
Okay. And you took Doxy for
Just the last 14 days.
14 days. How long ago was that?
2020, for the summer of 2020.
No, yes, 5 years. It was July of 2020. 5 years.
Okay, were you still nursing your son at that time?
No, we were in Tennessee in Airbnb. I got bit and I literally like stopped nursing him then because I had extra milk with me. So I like cold turkeyed him as soon as I found the tick. Which at most had been attached for a few hours. Yeah,
Okay,
because I knew that it could be transmitted through the breast milk and I didn't want to risk getting it to him, so.
yeah, so that's kind of suggestive that you might have had it before then. Has he had any indication of starting that on his own?
Of Lyme symptoms? Yeah, so the biggest thing that I noticed with him is he's so stiff in the morning. Like he like walks like a pirate almost, like he doesn't really bend his knees. And that could be related to something else, but he's stiff in the mornings. He doesn't have a lot of stamina, doesn't have a lot of like endurance type of energy. He doesn't really like being out in the heat too much, but all those can be related to adrenals and other things, so it's hard to like narrow it down to one single cause.
Yeah.
But he's been bit by multiple ticks.
Was he stiff like that since he was a young infant, or did that?
I don't remember him being stiff like that, but no, I think it's really been more in the last year or so, don't you?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. As I was just wondering, with all the interaction that goes on, Lyme disease is a fluid transfer disease. It's not a tick-borne disease, just a tick-borne disease. Ticks transfer fluid, but anything that transfers fluid from one host to another will transfer Lyme disease. So it's in the sexual fluids, breast milk, blood supply. It's in a certain amount of food. If you're eating rare venison, that could easily do it. Mosquito bites, they've tracked the Lyme bacteria from the egg of the mosquito through the nymph, larva, adult, and it's still active and easily transferable. Biting flies, gnats, mosquitoes down in the south, it's really, really common. So whenever you have a couple that have any functional intimacy whatsoever, one has it, the other one's exposed, and it's common to be a carrier and not necessarily symptomatic. And the symptoms will usually show once you hit the wall of stress and it pushes you over the cliff, the immune system gets depressed, and then it breaks out. The doxycycline, it pushes it into biofilms, and it'll hide in biofilms. Research says 17 years. We've seen it last longer than that. Just whenever stress hits, it breaks out. So if we back up and we look at all this stuff, there's a whole host of symptoms going on. Both you and both your children have a fair amount of rashes, right?
Elena we've noticed recently, like she's red under her eyes, but she doesn't really have any rashes. Elijah has always been the one who has the dry, bumpy, itchy skin, and he's very prone to rashes. As a child, I was very prone to rashes. I had like elevated histamine, and like if I like touched my skin, it would, raise up. Like I could like write on my skin and you could see the letters that I was writing. Scott, he has what almost looks like psoriasis. He gets rashes on his chest, his scalp, his face. Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause rashes are almost always tied into gut dysfunction. With that toxicity, psoriasis is absolutely a result of that. We've got two different pathways of detox. Phase one, there's 5 different routes of phase one. Phase one makes things more toxic. That's what creates free radicals. And phase two makes those water soluble so we can excrete them into the toilet. The 3 out of the 4 detox organs is inside of the gut. Small intestinal wall, colon wall, and the gut flora. The liver is supposed to be the catch-all for everything else. And outside of that, we don't have detox organs. So when those get overwhelmed, like say the gut gets too much inflammation, it goes into atrophy, the microvilli atrophy, all of the good flora washes down the toilet and pathogens grow. And after that, we don't digest food, we ferment it and we rot it, and it creates this huge toxic environment that the liver can't catch. So it spills out systemically. Your lungs and your skin are your secondary elimination organs. So whenever you see rashes, things like that, it lets you know the detox pathways are clogged. There's too much toxicity being either generated in the body or added on top. And every case I've seen, which is a lot of cases of mold, autoimmune issues, Lyme, and all that, the bulk of the toxicity comes out of the gut, and then the environmental ones add on top of that from a beat up immune system. Over half the immune system is in the gut, and it's that way because God designed the immune system to be in the place where we're most likely to get attacked. And that the gut is just the place for that to happen. So when you see respiratory issues in the past, like what you had, Rebecca, or skin issues like that, it lets you know detox pathways are clogged, elimination isn't going out the normal pathways. And when it can't go out the normal pathways, it goes out the secondary pathways. What can't get out those pathways, it starts to store in the fats. That's where the cancer comes in. It takes 3 things to set the stage for cancer to grow, and a 4th spark to create it. The 3 things are low nutrient density, acidic pH. With acidic pH, you cannot absorb, carry, deliver, or utilize oxygen, low oxygen. And on top of that, it just takes an inflammatory spark to start the cancer. When you look at our organ systems, the most sensitive organs we have is the hormonal organs. They're all 50% fat. Thyroid is the first one to get affected, the adrenals the second. So there you have the thyroid cancer issue. You've got this metabolic perfect storm there, and you add toxicity on top of that, and that's what creates all of that stuff. The nodules are just an indication of the same type of thing. So that's clogged detox pathways. So that and you look at the bumpy skin on your son, what you were talking about when you were young, that is malabsorption, food intolerances, different things along that line that sets that stage. And the skin is it's like a window to look into the health on a whole bunch deeper side. Once you understand how to look at it, it tells you a picture is worth 1,000 words. It really is. I've been able to do complete consults just off looking at people's pictures. They're that important. They really are. And they, you know, I can look back and forth at what people write in their papers that they send me, and back at the pictures that they have, and you can tell hormonal dysfunctions by body shapes. You can tell toxicity issues by body shapes. You can tell absorption issues from skin things. You can tell food intolerance from skin things. It's pretty amazing once you understand what you're looking at, and that is something that's been apparent throughout. So it's always a beat up immune system that sets the stage for people to get Lyme disease. Our immune system it's like the national defense system that we have. It works at that kind of efficiency. Nothing should be able to get in, even something that's really stealth. But when you take something like doxycycline, it causes inflammatory destruction of what's left of the gut wall. It destroys what's left of the gut flora, and the pathogens just go wholesale. And inside the body where the Lyme bacteria are supposed to be, within 2 hours, it's driving them into biofilms, and they'll hide out there forever. And they'll break out whenever you get stressed. Some people have more of a constitution where they don't necessarily get so symptomatic like you, Scott. And some people are weaker and they have the symptoms all the time. It's common that women become more symptomatic because almost all the toxicity in the world is estrogenic. You look at all your herbicides, they're estrogenic. You look at plastics, they're estrogenic. You look at all of the things that go on, all your pharmaceuticals are estrogenic. Men don't have as many estrogen receptors. So that protects us more than women, because women have a lot more estrogen receptors because that's how they're built. All these environmental toxins affect them a whole bunch more. But if we look at our men and women embryologically, we're identical till about 7 weeks. And then
Yeah, and Scott, growing up, they eat just more whole foods and healthier. His dad gardened, they ate a lot of their own foods, and we were very much like an instant potatoes and hamburger helper and like ravioli out of the can type family. We lived next to a cornfield that got crop dusted all the time, and I was probably on antibiotics a minimum, like a 7 to 10 day course, a minimum of 2 times a year my whole life. Sometimes more than that, really. And I don't think you really hardly ever recall having them, except when you got. He did
Yeah.
almost get sepsis when he broke his knee, but outside of that, he's been.
Oh yes, I got staph.
Yeah.
yeah, so that
Yeah.
that sets the stage for a lot of things, because an interesting thing, Roundup, the most commonly known herbicide that people are aware of, it first came on the market as a drain cleaner, believe it or not. And the reason for the drain cleaner, it chelates minerals and it pulled them out of the clogged pipes. Well, it does the same thing in all biological forms. It converts the minerals that we would utilize in biology into unusable forms and locks them up. And with that, that shuts down detox pathways and everything. It's this, the bacteria that grow in our gut, the bacteria that feed the plants in the soil, use the same pathways we use to detox. Cytochrome P450 stage is the shikimate pathway that does that. And, you go on and on and on, but it does it by locking the minerals up. So nothing works. Absolutely nothing works. And then people are real vulnerable. So the earlier that happens, the more you set the stage for everything, which is another part of the reason why the cancer issues. So those are highly cancerogenic, and Roundup isn't the highest in that. Atrazine is at least 10 times worse than that. That's in all your cornfields. If you're around corn and they're crop dusting that, then you have that. So that's what sets all the stage for that. Those things can be undone in a huge way, but you've got to set the course of life in a direction where you're actually addressing everything. Food and diet, gut health is key in that. It's absolutely key. So it's pretty critical. So if you First of all, even Harvard admits that the doxycycline does not clear Lyme disease. It only hopes to reduce its reproduction so the immune system can take care of it. Once it gets into biofilm, the immune system can't touch it. Antibiotics can't touch it. Almost all the biofilm busters that we've tested don't do anything, and they're too toxic to use. We use some creative ways to get it into every tissue, even the bone marrow. And deal with things like that. But with young children and all that, it's obvious you guys have some kind of functional intimacy, and there's no way that one of you could have it and not the other. And with your son having it, we already know that for sure. It's likely that you might have had that before he was born. He may have gotten that some other way.
Quick question for you on that though, since it is so prevalent and people are getting bit by more and more ticks are getting tested positive for it. You obviously like don't want to avoid the outdoors. There's ways to be smart about it, but from a perspective of like, I won't name names. Some people like really raw beef and raw meat, not raw venison, but raw beef. So then if you're continuing to contract this, even if you're asymptomatic, you're continuing to pass it along to your family. So how can you be preventative without living in a bubble?
It's really, really easy when you think of
Good answer.
eating meats like what you're talking about. The beef is the only animal in the world you can hang to cure because there's a microbiome in the meat itself that actually breaks down the connective tissue and tenderizes it, and that's an average of like 10 days. There's no other meat that does that. Where I grew up, deer hunting was 105 degrees outside on average. Anybody that hung their deer even put it in a bag to keep the blowflies off. It had maggots within 36 hours on the outside. So that depends a whole bunch on a lot of things. You look at organ meats like the liver, understanding what the liver does. It's an immune system issue. It's a filter to catch all the microbes that come out of the gut. It's a detox organ. It makes no sense to do that whatsoever. If you look at cultures around the world that eat raw meat, I think there's a tribe in Africa that will take animal meat and like tie it between the thighs of another animal for a small period of time and call that cooking. And that really doesn't make sense because that's not clean at all, and they don't have water to wash it, and their water is extremely toxic as far as that goes. Here in the States, most of the meats that people get are from feedlots, and those are really toxic. You can have all kinds of toxic microbes growing inside of that, and that doesn't make sense to eat raw meat as far as that goes. You look traditionally, like in the Orient sushi, you can easily scrutinize how clean fish are. You can tell by the scales how clean the meat is, what the fat content is, whether that is going to be sushi meat or not. And they also have things with it to kill the parasites, like the ginger. It'll kill the parasites when you eat it. Not the case with mammal meat. It's not at all. And there's not really anything you can do with that. You can have it medium rare and be safe, but you get blood rare, and that's just not the case. As far as lifestyle issues, people that are outdoors, I grew up in the outdoors, I couldn't tell you how many ticks I've had. It's got to be way over 100, maybe in the hundreds. Where I used to live, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, they'd crawl in bed and get you in bed in the middle of the night. It was insane how many ticks were there. It's just a good idea if you're outdoor people to when you come in the evening, do tick checks.
Yeah, we always do. It's just when you find them when they're already attached. And so so you're saying that you wouldn't be eating rare meat?
Medium rare, as long as it's pink, you're probably okay. But rare, there's no way to protect yourself. Absolutely not. And then you're just living in a fear bubble of. First of all, your immune system might be doing pretty well, but your children's isn't developed yet. Your son, he's just got the elementary side of the immune system about working fully, but the rest of it not the case. I was surprised. We went to years ago a Williamsburg up in Virginia. That's where Thomas Jefferson lived and some other things, and they rebuilt that institution. We went into their fellowship hall there, which was kind of interesting and unique. And I asked the guy, so what do they do with the children? He goes, children? What children? I said, with the children that people had. He said, people didn't let their children out in public. I go, what? They knew their immune systems weren't strong enough till children were 17 years of age. And they were not allowed into town, out in public. They interacted a little bit with neighbors, but that was it till they're 17 years of age. They knew more about things way back 200-300 years ago than we do now.
You think because back then, too, naturally, like people traveled by horse, so they didn't go everywhere. You were in a smaller local community, probably having a lot of the same microbes and same issues with different like bacteria and viruses and stuff. Do you think that like when you travel often and you're all over the world in the country and your kids from infancy are with you, that that's hard on their bodies?
That completely depends. My wife ran into a article a little while ago. A lady was on the planes. One of the stewardess come in a foreign country. One of the stewardess comes through and says, "Everybody cover your face. We're going to fumigate the cabin." She gets up. She goes, "What? We're going to fumigate it for insects?" She goes, "I got multiple chemical sensitivities. I need to talk to somebody in charge." She ends up talking to the pilot and he canceled it. But in foreign flights, it is required to spray the entire cabin with insecticides. Insecticides are all neurotoxins. They're some of the worst that's out there that you can have. And it's just not good. And I didn't know that till a little while ago. I've been all over the world. Last time I went anywhere was Australia. I got hit with the foreign shedding from the vaccines, and you talk about wiping you out. That stuff's bad. It's way, way worse than what we have over here. So it depends on how old they are. My kids grew up going with me down in Mexico, doing ministry trips. You know, sometimes several times a year. They just, that was when they were young till they left the house, pretty much. So it really depends on a whole bunch of different factors, where you're going, what the situations are. It opens your eyes for sure. You know, but as far as living in a bubble, the tick checks, having your socks over the top of your pants, not running around outside in in short pants, or keeping your grass cut so it's short. There's those are different things that are really practical. Food supply, you just be wise about it and understand that's there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, medium rare meats and
Okay. So you look at the bulk of your symptoms on top of that. That's hormone dysregulation. There was one in the family with vaginal itching, symptoms with that. Commonly, that's not vaginal. The front wall of a woman's reproductive tract is the urethra. And the urethra is where you will empty out oftentimes the unprocessed toxins of the body. That'll inflame the urethra, and that's mistaken as vaginal issues oftentimes. Although with the history of what's going on, the flora inside a woman's reproductive tract is basically the same as in her colon. And if there's problems in the colon, which there obviously are in your family's case, then that can bring that. Also, toxicity is also another one. That's obviously a case in the household also. So there's a bunch of different factors that can be there, but it's highly likely that's more urethral.
Okay. Well, in the
Especially,
case of the kids, obviously they have all the things we've handed down to them, but they have always been on a whole food diet since they were little, and like, you know, we've always scrubbed for, like, they get organic, and we still wash off the pesticides, and our environment is extremely clean, like even the paint on the walls is no VOC. So I have a harder time sometimes, like, think, like, I know how I grew up, and I don't know everything about how he grew up, but it's hard to think that our kids would have such high toxicity when we go like the extra mile to prevent it.
Okay, but this is what sets the stage. A child, when they're birthed normally, as they go down the birth canal, they pick up the woman's flora, and that's what sets the stage for their life. If yours wasn't ever fixed, they've got that pathological flora that's been there for at least 3 generations. And that has to be restored and fixed so that it doesn't pass. And once you do that and you heal the gut, fix the flora issues, fix the dietary issues, then those things just go away. But the stage is set because of generations of history. And you bring up a point that a lot of people think that they can do a few things like change their diet and be healthy. The gut's probably the hardest organ in the body to heal. The lining is 1 cell layer thick. It replaces itself every 24 hours. The lining of your gut's microvilli. It's like hold your fingers up in front of your face. That the fingers represent your microvilli. That secretes a mucus. The flora lives in the mucus, the caps in between that, and just a little layer over the top. Whenever you got chronic inflammatory issues, those microvilli, they atrophy, and they can go down to looking like your knuckles in as little as 24 hours. It takes very, very little time at all to do that. When you birth children with this and pathological flora, you pass all that on. And you can't heal all that by changing the diet. Diet's a big part of things, but it won't heal that gut wall. You got to be really specific in doing it, and it takes way longer to heal the gut than it does to deal with Lyme disease. Lyme disease, we just did a 30-day reevaluation of someone that had Lyme disease for about 25 years, been to multiple docs, spent an insane amount of money with zero help whatsoever. And inside of 30 days, the Lyme is like 80% reduced. The Babesia is about 60. The strongest strain, the lighter strains, it is about 60%. The stronger strains about 50%. So you can do that really quick, but with that person, it's going to take at least 6 months to heal the gut. And the Lyme and all the other things would be long gone with that. And that's just the way we're designed. And almost nobody's dealing with that. You look at all the...
Heal the gut. You know, so like in chiropractic, we would say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So once you've got the gut, so to speak, back online, as long as you're not threatening it with major things, it should be a little easier to keep it good than it is to correct it when it's bad.
Yeah, you really don't need to do anything other than maintain a really clean, healthy lifestyle, and it'll stay good. It's when you introduce it with super high stress, any kind of medicine, NSAIDs, antibiotics, steroids, antifungals, just a huge list of pharmaceuticals all destroy that. Food intolerances will do that. So as long as you know how to manage your foods and you keep in a clean lifestyle with clean water and all that, you're good. You can mess it up by doing something, but if you catch it early, it doesn't take nearly as long to bring it back. It's just when you let it go to the point of where it's really broken. And with all this going on, all the toxicity dysregulates all the hormones. So there you have all the psycho-emotional issues, you got all the hormonal things, you have cycles being irregular and in creating all kinds of different problems just because all the hormones are just sideways because of what's going on with toxicity in the gut and all that. And as you heal all that up, the hormones heal themselves and everything restores. So thyroid tends to come back one of the first as far as the hormones, and that's really good news for you. The adrenals are what set the stage for all the sexual hormones, blood sugar regulation, all that. They're slower than the thyroid. They're smaller than the thyroid, and they have 11 jobs instead of one. So it stands to reason that it's going to take longer to do that. The sexual hormones heal as the adrenals heal. So all that comes along. As far as Scott, where the knee goes, we got to figure out what's at the stage for this. Whether you got ACL issues, most of the issues that go on with the meniscus, there's a ligament on the outside of the meniscus called the coronary ligament. And as far as residual symptoms, that's usually what the problem is, not just a tear in the meniscus. You can heal the meniscus, you can heal a lot of things. It's the ligaments that are lax that allows the knee to crash around that tear things. And there's rehab things that can be done to make the muscles take up the slack for what those weak ligaments are. I've injured my left knee really bad 3 times. I mean, really bad. And I used to be extreme skier. After the 3rd time I did it, my ski would wander back and forth like 20 degrees, just no control whatsoever. I used skiing to rehab mine, and it was just rock solid. I could go back to skiing however I want. You can see me a half mile away. My style is so radically different. You can tell who I am a half mile away. I've taught a ton of people to ski in a very unorthodox way of teaching them, but I can get somebody skiing on their own in generally less than half a day. So, that's me, and that's my own story with a knee that was just out of control, just totally out of control, and you'd never know that was the case. Absolutely never. So, and knees, shoulders are 2 things that I've kind of specialized in for a long period of time. So we just got to figure out what the problem is and then address that.
I don't think I put it on my intake paperwork because I don't really know if it asked, but I've dislocated my left shoulder a number of times, over and over and over again. But it's been a long time since this happened.
So you did what a number of times over and over?
Dislocated my left shoulder.
Okay, that can be looked at too. Can figure out what.
It's pretty good now. I take it easy with certain ranges of motion.
Yeah. It's really interesting. The principles of orthopedic stuff, they try and hide it in hieroglyphics, but it's actually pretty simple once you understand how to make it work. And there's always ways to address those. Always.
Awesome.
So after a whole bunch of years of construction, I destroyed my right shoulder. I couldn't even throw a ball to my son more than a few times, and my shoulder just be wrecked. I couldn't use it. But you learn how to do things. It depends on what all goes on with those things. So looking at all of this stuff, everything ties together, and that's what I'm trying to say. It all ties together, primarily from gut dysfunction that allows for infections like Lyme disease to bloom and grow and all that. That's where the toxicity comes from that creates all of the rashes, the hormonal dysfunction, and everything else. And once you deal with all that stuff, it all just resolves and goes away. So Lyme disease typically takes an average 6 to 8 weeks to get rid of it. H. pylori, usually 6 weeks. If Clostridia is an issue, that's 7 to 10 days. There's Babesia divergent, the average is about 4 months. The other strains about 3. Candida's got 4 different types as far as that goes, where that grows, and that gets systemic when all this goes on. You got a yeast form. Almost all your Candida cleanse programs are trying to deal with the yeast form. It's the easiest to get rid of, and it's the one that gives all the visual symptoms that go on. The fungal side is is harder. The fungal parasite, if you look at mold or if you look at fungus in a microscope, mold, you see all this fuzz coming off of it? That's mycelia. That's the feeding tubules. All the cell walls in all the forms of candida are chitin. Chitin is impervious to the immune system. The immune system can't touch it. It's a normal gut flora that keeps that in check. So once you wipe out the gut flora, it can do whatever you want. When those mycelia, those feeding tubules, pierce the gut wall, which is only one cell layer thick, and break off, they can float anywhere in the body and create a new colony. So that's what a fungal parasite is. And mold is just mold and fungus. They morph back and forth depending on what food source is. Mold usually doesn't grow inside of us as mammals. There's a few rare cases where people's environment, like their houses or where they work, things like that, are real moldy, and it might grow inside of the nose where the filters start, the sinuses, or maybe in the lungs, but it's usually more in the sinuses and in the nose where that happens, because it's just not a case. When mold is a big issue, then it's usually from influx coming on the outside, and it's the spores that are where the toxins come from. So once we do an evaluation, we know mold's a bunch of an issue. If it is, we find out where the mold is, get remediation issues that are a fraction of what other people do, and we can resolve that. But I don't think that's so much the case with you guys. So looking at all this stuff, it's gonna take at least 6 months to deal with you two. Your daughter, your son might get just under that, but it's gonna be darn close to that anyway. And with our normal program with stuff, we work with things like doing a 6-month program that's doing full evaluations with all the labs, and we do all our own work with that. On day one, so we know everything that's going on, how we need to get people to eat, what they need to drink, and all that to be well. Weekly care for an average about 6 weeks. We do, and after that, it's every couple of weeks. Sometimes we can stretch it farther than that. We do reevaluation at the end of every month. If you go someplace else, our evaluation, just getting the lab information, you drop over $9,000 and not have half of the information we have with our evaluation. Mark Hyman, #1 functional medicine doc in the world, his extensive testing for an incoming patient is 100 tests, or 4.5 times that.
Yeah, I just actually did Mark Hyman's 100 tests in March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they won't tell you a fraction of what I'm looking for. They just won't. They can't. You know, Lyme test is $3,500 for a good one, and 0 to 20% accurate. So, you know, by the end of 6 months of care, you're talking over $50,000 in labs plus all the care and everything else. My cost for doing that is $7,500. I said when I work with families, I can reduce that. I'd take a third off of that working you guys. So if we added all that, that'd be like $30,000 to do everything. If we do everybody together, we knock 10 off of that, do it for 20, the whole household. And your kids will probably be done by that. You, Rebecca, we might have to do a little bit of cleanup. Scott might be done too. You know, a lot of it depends on how strict you stay with your food stuff, because that's half of what the deal is. And we'll have to go through your cupboards and figure out what else clean. You brought some of your grains last time I saw you, and some of those were a surprise to you. Not to me, because that's pretty consistent.
So just for clarity's sake, no rare beef.
It's really not a wise thing, because you don't have, first of all, your H. pylori, if it's anything like anybody else's, it's going to be really high. You don't create very much stomach acid, and that's the first barrier protection with food, is the stomach acid. It kills the bacteria. That's going to be too low, and it's going to slip right through. Get it to the rest of your system. And
Well, the other concern is even if, say, Scott was eating it and he had higher acid in his stomach and his body could handle it, but he's like, living in the same house as everyone else and their bodies can't.
if you think about it this way, when you look at, um, yeah, I know a woman who keeps saying her husband's really good, but he's completely dysfunctional. He's extremely overweight, and he doesn't want anybody else to heal because he doesn't want to have that accountability of anything that's on there. When you look at from a biblical perspective, a husband, he sacrifices everything for his family, and his family comes first. Um, it's really interesting. I grew up in one of the most dysfunctional households you could ever grow up in. I never saw a functional dad anywhere. And when the Lord told me to get married, I go, where's my example? What I follow? And he told me, don't worry about it. I'll teach you myself. And I mean, raise my kids different than anybody I've ever seen. And everything that I desired, I just set aside. I taught all my kids to ski, and we started off cross country skiing, and you know, we did things. I made stuff fun, and you do things to protect the household, which is really a sacrificial role. It's kind of interesting. You look at Joseph and Mary. Joseph was a very, very sacrificial man, which really gave Mary a whole bunch of rest because he listened to the angels. He listened to the Word of God rather than his own heart and all the social pressures that are out there. And he walked contrary to everyone else's belief systems, everyone else's agenda. And he kept Mary, who's pregnant, and he knew he didn't get her pregnant. And in everybody's mind, somebody had to. You know, I heard of one time where a girl got pregnant by her brother, and they figured out what happened is he ejaculated in the tub. It didn't get washed out, and she went and took a bath. Okay, that's rare. That's extremely, extremely rare. It's like, wow, that's kind of out of the box. But for a young virgin, you don't have that kind of thing going on and all that. And you got to hear the Word of God to really be able to say, okay, this is who you designed to be my wife, and this is the Son of God inside of her. I might not be able to wrap my head around that, but I'll accept that. You guide me, you direct me. I'm going in fear from here forward, and that's where you have the healthiest households. My wife has a lot more food restrictions than I do. I just eat the way that she needs to. It just makes life a whole bunch easier. We cook together. I cooked since I was 5 years old because I had to manage my own health. So, there's all these different aspects that are there with everybody, and it's when you have intolerances and chronic health issues, you need to set the stage where you manage the most sensitive people as a whole, as a family. And you just shop that way, you cook that way, you eat that way for everybody rather than everybody doing something different.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and we both appreciate that you are, we love having a doctor who is so biblically based and following, God and not just his own pride and ego and ideas, so it's a combination of your knowledge and understanding with what he is, told you to follow. So we appreciate that because it's just rare in doctors to have a doctor who is bringing God into all of the equation.
Yeah, he's the one that empowers us. He's the one that shows us what's going on. He's the one that showed us how to do what we do. And that's why our results are, you think about it, for Natural Doc to beat every single specialist around the world in every case they've shared for 4 decades is like, that's impossible. And we have over 90% resolution of cases that have been going on oftentimes for decades, have seen the best specialists all over the world with no help. We have over a 90%, it's like 95% of those people we get well and healthy again. And the ones that don't are ones that don't follow instructions. Bless you.
Thank you.
You know,
Well, that is amazing.
yeah, so now you're double blessed. You know, that's statistically impossible. That's all God.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and we're fortunate to have found you, and looking forward to working through this stuff.
Yeah. So, you know, if you want, we could start evaluating the rest of the family this week, and just start getting everybody on the same page.
I'm waiting on him to make the decision, but yeah.
So,
So, what do you think?
yeah, I thought we were already doing it.
Okay. I think my Tuesday afternoon's pretty free, and I think a lot Thursday is, so we can start Tuesday afternoon. And I'm gonna need first morning catch of urine on ice with everybody. You got 3 sources of water before your filter, after your filter, and then you treat it with something.
Yep.
Bring those with you. I can store those so we can test everybody on it, and we'll just jump in. We'll go, and we're going to know by the time we're done where we need to start, and then we may need to get through some of your foods in the household, because that's a big factor.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So do you want to contact me about times? Because we've got myself and Scott and Elena who still need the consult, and then we've got Elijah's regular appointment this week.
Right. So right now, I think we could probably start at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. I can do 2 of you on Tuesday afternoon. We can do the other one on Thursday, and we can see Elijah with the one on Thursday.
Okay, so either Scott and Elena or myself and Elena tomorrow is what you're saying?
Yep.
At 1?
Yeah, I think that's going to work. I'll double check and confirm that with an email.
Okay. Alrighty.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. And once we start, then we're going to know when all the other questions will be answered.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone's stuff looks like, so. The
All right.
evaluation is the most fun for me.
All right, that sounds good. So I'll double check the calendar, make sure I got everything in order, and I'll send you an email, just confirm what time exactly.
Okay. Sounds
Sound good?
Thank you.
So we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.